Hey Simonics, what's up? Welcome to a new quick win. Today we're going to talk about biometric authentication, which means Face ID or fingerprint. And we will use this in combination in an application like inside a password manager or a banking app that you might have used in the past. So you've seen this before. If you put the app to the background, you come back and you see a lock screen, or you have a running timer that shows 5 minutes until lock out. And then when you log out or you put the app to the background, you can enable the functionality of the application again by using Face ID or Touch ID, and that's exactly what we're gonna do. So we are not going to implement the whole JSON web token flow or any kind of token-based stuff. You can do this on your own, but this is just the part of showing the lock screen and locally locking your application. You can get started with a blank new Ionic application and the Capacitor Biometric Auth plugin. This plugin will handle basically everything for us. We can check it out somewhere on GitHub here. It's not yet inside the Capacitor community, so the name might change in the future, but it was actually the one that was the most recently updated plugin. Additionally, we need 3 pages. We need the login just to show a little login. I actually don't know why, but it looks good. The inside area and the lock screen, which will display as a modal. And then we need the service, which will handle all the access of the timer. You can also directly go ahead and run the Ionic build and add the native platforms, because we need to dive into the native platforms. So for Android, you need to navigate to app source, main, Java, whatever main activity. It's the usual procedure for Capacitor plugins. Import the Biometric Auth plugin and add it within the init function. This time we also need to add a little information for iOS, so we can do this inside Visual Studio Code. We don't really need Xcode for this. The only thing we need to add is the NS Face ID usage description key and an according description. So whatever your application needs, well, put it into there. Use something useful. In the past, my apps got rejected because of such a string. It wasn't the Face ID usage description, but something else. So always take this really serious. Okay, we've generated a few pages. I already deleted the home page. And within the app routing, you can now change it so your login page is the first page that we display, and then we get the inside and the locked. Actually, we don't really need the lock page at all. Yeah, we can. I think we can remove it, hopefully. We will see later if we get into any trouble. Now let's try and start with our access. Ooh, we shouldn't see this. You haven't seen this. We want to do this together. Okay, let's leave it like this. Okay, we got the blank access servers. You can also inject the platform and the modal controller. And a logout timer, which I used the behavior subject. Perhaps you could also just use a number, but I felt like using the subject and emitting new values felt just a bit better. So let's start by resetting our logout timer. You could easily trigger this functionality in the places where you need to. For example, the user has performed some kind of action. You could use an HTTP interceptor, and whenever there's a successful HTTP request, you reset this logout timer. It's really up to you when you're going to trigger this. We will just trigger it inside our inside area. But basically, we will say logout timer next, and then the duration for which you wanna enable your application. Let's say 10 seconds for now. So that's a nice timer for testing. Then we got a function, or we should write a function, decrease timer, in which we decrease the timer. So we will use set timeout for this. There we go. Every second we want to run this function, and if this dot logout timer value is equal to null, we want to do some special action, which means locking our application, and otherwise we will just say this dot logout timer next. I kind of feel like this is overkill with the behavior subject, but without the behavior subject, my view wasn't updating, so you could use this with the async pipe easily. But I really feel it's like overkill. I don't know why. Okay, so if we're not yet at 0, we will just set our lockout timer to the new value, so old value -1, and then call the function again, so it will be triggered a second later. If we are at 0, we're gonna call a function to lock our application. And in this case, I'm actually going to bring that snippet in. We want to present a modal, our locked page. Did you? Yeah, you did it right. So we can simply put it in here, this.lock application. This is really, well, not too intelligent lock mechanism. It visually locks the application since we're bringing up a modal, but it's not locking the whole application itself. If you want to protect it even more, you could perhaps add a variable like is locked, which you set true or false depending on whatever condition. And then you write another guard functionality and check for is locked, so people really can't access other pages inside the application if the application is locked. So this is really just a basic implementation. I didn't want to do too much. I wanted to show the general flow with a biometric authentication. Now, if we reset the lockout timer, we should also start the timer again, which is done with decrease timer. And of course, we also want to listen to the platform pause event, which is really important. So we can subscribe to it, not really interested in the value if there's any. And whenever the platform pause is called, it basically means Cutover app is put into the background or Capacitor app is put into the background. So in that case, we will immediately lock our application. That's a very good mechanism to subscribe to this pause event. You could also use the resume event. Doesn't really matter too much. I think if you want to make it secure, try to lock the app as fast as possible, right, with the pause event. So now we got our service in place. Let's quickly move to the login page. In fact, let's just do it in here. I will just add a button with a router link to go inside. So I will also on the side try to somehow open my device preview. The problem is the biometric authentication, of course, won't work inside the browser. So therefore, we will check it out on a real device after I've added that code, or if I've actually the input for it. Yeah, I know what you think. Simon could have done that upfront, and I totally agree with you. But never mind, we're now inside the application. We got the preview, so I can do login and I'm inside. That's cool, but we don't have any timer running yet. So let's move inside the inside page. My naming is always on top for these things. Private access service. Access service. Kind of hard word for me. And we're gonna actually use the let's use the Ion view will enter. There's also the did enter, I think, but that Ion view will enter. Well, it doesn't really matter. Let's use Ion view did enter. And here we're gonna call the access service reset lockout time, because we just entered the page or some kind of action occurred and we want to reset the timer. We, of course, also want to display the user. I've got this in some banking applications where a little timer is running at the top. So we're going to keep track of the lockout timer by using the access service lockout. Yeah, I really don't know why there's a problem. Lockout timer as observable, but it should work like this. So now we get the timer, we reset it on that page, and we now just need to display it. I, for this example, just added a little footer with a row, column 12, and then automatic lockout. The only thing that's maybe a bit difficult is this part. So basically, the lockout timer isn't observable. That's why we use an async pipe. We could leave it like that already. That would be fine to display the seconds. But I wanted to use the Angular date pipe to show minute seconds. And to use the Angular date pipe with our example, we need milliseconds, so we also need to multiply this, and in the end you get this kinda once again overkill expression, just to make this more difficult for you. Now let's check it out on the app again, and there we see automatic logout in 12:10. Okay, the timer is way too high. I really don't want to wait that long with you. Let's do it with 3 seconds, but yeah, I could have refreshed it now. And we see that we get to the lock screen. My lock screen has a little bit of color already, but besides that, no real functionality. So by now the application is locked and we need a way to unlock the application. And therefore we will bring in the plugins from Capacitor core and destructure it so we can use the biometric auth from the plugins object. That's what we want to get. Again, this won't work on browser, so I will also bring in a few variables in case you want to show a fallback, for example with a password. The user could define like a number sequence after the first login, and then that number sequence could be checked now as a fallback for the code. Also, if the FaceID fails a few times, which can happen currently during the COVID crisis, with the face being covered like this, it's always a good idea to implement a fallback for your user as well. Now, since the log page is basically a modal page, I will also inject the modal controller since we need to manually dismiss it later on. And now we're gonna get started right inside the ng on init when the page comes up and check if the biometric auth is actually available. We will keep track of this as biometric auth equals available equals please. Why is there no typing? Yeah, so if you check out the Git repository, you will see somewhere that there's actually available.has. Interesting naming. I might have named it differently, but I'm not the creator, so I'm not gonna complain about it. And if the user has biometric authentication, we can directly call a function to open biometric authentication. You could also leave this out and just do it on a button click, but it's usually a lot nicer if it immediately starts the authentication logic again. So let's call this one from here, and there we go. Now, as we can see on the page somewhere here, we now need to call biometric auth verify, and that's what we're gonna do. We can pass in different values here. Once again, really no typing, makes me kind of sad, and I'm not sure why, because usually this works. Maybe if I import capacitor biometric auth like this, yeah, then I actually kind of get a bit of typings, but then we see that options is only a reason, and here we see that options has a lot more options. So it's really, yeah, whatever. Let's comment this one out again so we can use it like this. I will use reason. I think reason is used as iOS string and title is used for Android. So if the authentication result is verified, once again, I don't have any code completion, I just found it here, it's verified true, or there's the status. In that case, we can go back to the real application. In our case, we will just call another function, because I will use this in another place again. And I will not only dismiss the modal controller, but I will pass in reset true. And I will tell you why in a second to keep up a little bit of tension here. So if the authentication with Face ID or Touch ID is successful, we're gonna try to dismiss the lock screen. We also need to handle the input of the password. So let's create another function for that. And let's call this one unlock. And we will do a super secret check if password is equal to 1234. Really a dummy example. We're gonna call dismiss lock screen as well. You could also now be more creative. Let's say on 3 failed authentications with code or with biometric authentication, you even bring the user completely back to the login screen and you log him out or her out. That would be possible as well. On top of that, dismissing the lock screen might not be enough for you. Perhaps you also have a token-based solution with access and refresh tokens. In that case, after dismissing the lock screen, you might have to request a new token, but I really didn't want to blow up this tutorial to too much information. Now, within our log page, we're gonna need a bit of content. What we need is, in fact, the ngIf show fallback. Well, since we have show fallback true at any times, it will be displayed all the time. So it's up to you if you want to show the fallback or implement some kind of logic for the fallback. Do you want Ioniq Academy to use it? Of course I want to do. Can you do it? Oh, it immediately works. You might not even know why it works, but it already works. So what we got in here is we actually, have we ever seen that screen? Show fallback is show fallback. What's the value of show fallback? It's true, so that's fine. We got just an icon, the input for our password, the button to use that password field, and another icon to manually trigger the dialog once again. I'm really not sure why we don't see the changes right now, but perhaps it's because we also still need to add a bit of CSS to make it look even better. So now let's try and see what happens after the automatic logout. Looks almost good, but it doesn't look good. Where's the content of my log page? Show fallback. Show fallback, definitely true. Sir, can you please just do it right? Am I on the wrong page? What's going on? Where's my information? Let me check this out. I actually don't know where it went wrong. I just removed the ngIf for now, so now we can see our super special password input, unlock with code, and a button to trigger the dialog again. So I could use password 1, 2, 3, 4. I feel like it's not going to work. Okay, it's going to work. That was unexpected. Let's try and cancel the FaceID again, and let's try to trigger it manually, and that works as well. I also ran this example on my Android device with fingerprint. It worked really awesome right out of the box. Now, the one thing that I forgot to mention is, why are we dismissing the modal controller with reset true? Now, if we check out the access service again, where we call the modal, there's actually a block on did dismiss, which checks if we dismissed it and the data contains reset. In that case, we're going to reset the logout timer. Initially, I had this a little bit different and directly from the log page called the service to reset the timer. The problem was, if we import the access service here, and in the access service, we import the log page, you get a circular dependency warning, and you really don't want to have this in your application. So this way makes it a lot easier. If the modal of the lock screen is dismissed with some flag to reset the timer, the reset logout timer will be just reset to whatever value you got in here. And just to prove that my Angular date pipe is working correctly, you see it's ticking down from 2 minutes now until our next logout. I hope you enjoyed this quick win on biometric authentication for Ionic applications. It's just a basic example of how you could add another layer of security to your applications. In fact, let me quickly show you the last example. Bringing app to the background, opening it again, works perfectly. In fact, I was a bit too fast today because the platform pause event wasn't triggered on iOS. I tried this on Android, it worked, it didn't work on iOS. So I completely removed the reference to platform and instead used the app from the Capacitor plugins. And with app, we can listen to different events like the app state change. Now, this also wasn't working 100%. Usually you could just listen to state is active, and if the app is not active, lock your application. But the problem was that this was actually also triggered while using FaceID on iOS. So I had like an infinite loop of lock app events, and therefore I also added the check to check if the logout timer value is above 0. Just to make sure, I also added this logout timer next 0 in lock app, just to make sure it's definitely just showing one time. But once you get this in place, you can actually log in with Face ID. We can kill it or bring it to the background, and once we bring the application back, we will see it is logged. So I hope you enjoyed this quick win on biometric authentication for both iOS and Android. It's just another layer of security that you can add to your application on top of your existing authentication system. Whatever you got, a JSON Web Token, Access Refresh Token, just make sure that this is not your only way of securing the application, because this is just a little barrier between unauthorized access to your application, but you should always prevent false access with an unverified token or expired tokens or anything like this on your backend side. So this is just a little bit of sugar on top, but it's actually really cool to easily make sure your application goes to this lock state once it's in the background or after a specific time. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and stay subscribed so you get notified about all the new tutorials, quick wins, and other app development and web development videos on this channel. If you want to learn more about Ionic with in-depth courses, a community of like-minded developers so you can learn and build your apps faster, you should definitely check out the Ioniq Academy, which is my code school to help you with everything Ionic, with a huge library of courses, material, and a supportive Slack channel so we can get your app out. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will see you inside the next video. Have a great day and happy coding. Simon.